Welcome to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Our mission is to bring you discussions on a wide array of topics in the coaching world to grow players on and off the court. You can connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, and also reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Now, here's your host, Coach Mike Hernandez.
Welcome back, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us here for another episode. As always, wherever in the world you're listening to us from, whatever platform you're listening to us on, thank you guys so much for the support. Thank you for all the messages, all the emails, all of the questions, especially that you've sent the show's way, especially about things that you want to hear episodes on or get topics covered on this show. I really do appreciate that. It gives me a lot of ideas, and it's really exciting to be able to kind of bring those ideas to life with these episodes. And what's really cool is about this particular topic that we're going to get into is I did have an email from somebody a few months ago talking about with me that process of, hey, I'm taking over a new program and I'm kind of going through this process of reflecting on, what did I like about my old stop and what am I going to use there? How do I know what to get rid of and what do I want to keep? And so I kind of kept that in the back of my mind, and it's really, really cool now that I have the opportunity to actually bring that to life as an episode topic about carrying over systems from program to program. So kind of thinking about what did you have in a previous stop and what is it that matters to you personally as a coach that you're going to be taking onto that next stop. And I'm really excited in particular to bring my guest on here because he is right in the thick of things with this process because he is in a new coaching position. And so I'm very happy to kind of talk about this subject with brand new head coach boys basketball side at Maple Shade High School. So very happy to be joined by Coach Steve Hand today. Coach, again, congratulations. How you doing today?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on, Mike. I was just listening to a couple of your old episodes with Coach Sheffield and stuff, and love what you do here.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Coach. All right, like I said, this is the new stop for you. So let's back up a little bit, Coach. Let's talk about your basketball journey, your coaching journey. Where's this great game taking you? And ultimately, how did you end up at this new position that you got at Maple Shade?
Yeah, so my coaching journey kind of started at my old high school, at Lenape High School in South Jersey. The area I'm from is right across the bridge from Philadelphia in Pennsylvania, right? So our school is in South Jersey. Lenape High School is the one I went to, Mount Laurel, New Jersey. Very successful program. When I was playing there in high school, we actually had a former NBA basketball player, Jason Thompson, go through there. I had some fantastic coaches. A guy named Bill Lang was the head coach there when I went there. His son is now the head coach over at St. Joe's, Billy Lang, and his father, Bill, is an absolute mentor to me. And I was very fortunate to be able to play under a guy who, not only had this great track record, coached in the CBA with Hubie Brown and stuff, but also was just great with kids. I wasn't the greatest basketball player in the world, right? I was more of a mediocre player, bench guy, and Coach Lang, didn't care what your role was on the team. He made you feel valuable, made you feel wanted, and even to this day, he's a mentor that I trust and talk to as often as I possibly can. Right, so started kind of there. I moved to Lenape actually from Philadelphia. My very beginnings there, I again really lucky, kind of a blue collar area in Philadelphia. My Uncle Joe coached us and my cousins and such in Philadelphia, and it was an awesome experience as well. He was kind of coming from the suburbs, did a great job kind of coming into the inner city a little more and bringing his cousins there and making sure that we all kind of grew up playing together. And that's where that love really started, right? Yeah. Whether it was going to Sixers games with those guys and the All-Star games that happened in Philadelphia Arena and stuff, that's really where the love kind of came from, right? I was like a nerd growing up, picking up basketball cards and stuff and collecting those, right? So, and we all loved it, right? Everybody in my family just loves basketball. We still play to this day. It's one of those sports that you can really play till you're 60 years old almost, right? I think it's what we all love about it. But so anyway, once I got done Lenape, wasn't sure what I was going to do. Once I got to college and, kind of got talked into playing for one of my coaching with one of my old JV coaches, a guy named Chuck Guitar, who another amazing basketball mind, played at Drexel, even won an NCAA tournament game against Syracuse when he was there with Malik Rose. And another, for a guy who didn't play much in high school, the basketball minds I've been lucky enough to be around has just been incredible. And he taught me really the work ethic and what it takes to be a great coach. Challenged me daily, and it's something that I thank him for profusely. And then from there, I actually took a little pit stop. I was the assistant athletic director for a little bit, for about 5 years. And again, really awesome experience there. Learned a different part of my life, kind of different approach to sports. Saw the macro, that basketball isn't the only sport in a high school, right? It's something we all learn about, and we have different challenges with, whether it's scheduling issues and all that stuff, right? So learned that part through Brian Laddie, our athletic director there. Finally got out of that role, wanted to go back into coaching, my real passion. And from there, I began a 1-year stint at a school called Haddonfield in South Jersey as well. And as far as sustained success in South Jersey, they are, as good as it gets. And the guy coaching there is named Paul Wiedemann, and he's been there for a very long time. Another South Jersey coaching Hall of Fame coach, a very successful player too back in his day. And I just met some amazing people there, right? So it's between Paul Wiedemann, guy named Brian Stafford, Scott Cooperschmidt, and a guy I like to call one of my best friends now, Anthony Parenti. Just a top-notch staff. They're a smaller school than Lenape is, which is going to really help me with my newer program, because my newer program is also a smaller school. So I got to learn a little bit the differences between us, a big school like Lenape, that is the biggest public school, one of the bigger public schools in South Jersey, versus Maple Shade, which is going to be one of the smaller schools, the smallest group school in South Jersey. So learned a lot there. Another great thing, great systems I kind of learned there. And then last year, I spent a year back at Lenape. We got to the South Jersey Group 4 final under Matt Wolf, who is probably my best friend, I would say, at this point, and just an amazing coach. And I learned through Matt, really just, his big thing is kind of doesn't matter what your role is as a player. He cares about each one of them the same. And I think it's something I'm definitely going to take to my next stop here. And, fortunate enough that last journey there with Matt, getting to be his varsity assistant, learn a lot, and just a truly amazing journey last year, getting to Rutgers. We didn't pull it off in the state final, but had some great people, great moments, and it was an awesome experience. And finally now here at Maple Shade, and just got board approved last week, and trying to figure out how to start from there.
So let me ask you about that, Coach, for those who might be listening, who might be in that situation, or maybe know somebody who might be taken over late, like you are. When you were thinking about this process of coming in late to a program, how did you kind of prioritize, how you were going to use this time, knowing that, you didn't get the summer, you didn't necessarily get the traditional off season. So what kind of went into your planning of like how you're going to attack this thing now as you're now starting to take over?
Yeah, I kind of treated it like I would for a game, right? Like we scout for games, right? We do as much research as we possibly can for a game. So I tried to get as much research as I possibly could about people who have kind of been in a similar position. And one of the guys I reached out to, no relation to Bill Lang, but this guy named Donnie Lang, who had a similar spot in South Jersey. He coaches at Overbrook High School, and kind of just told me, listen, like if you're taking over that late start, you got to find out what's going to work for you. Do your research, do your homework, find out who's going to be on your side in that town. Reach out to the feeder programs as much as you can. There's no use in kind of sitting on your hands, right? My state has these guidelines that we can't really have contact with the kids in the fall as far as practices are concerned, right? Every state I know is a little different with that, but Donnie gave me some really good advice as far as like, all right, well, if you're limited there, here's some things you can do, right? So whether that's reaching out to other coaches, reaching out to some trainers maybe that will work with your kids, right? Finding out what the kids are interested in. Another guy, Eric Cassidy, told me about like, hey, you know what? You can go tailgate a football game with these kids, right? So building those relationships while you don't have a chance to maybe work with them as far as on-court work. These kids, it's their senior year only happens once, right? So what are you going to do to try to make that senior year experience as great as possible? So I was trying to build relationships as much as I can with these kids, and luckily enough, they've really taken to me, and they've shown me, like, I didn't know much about Maple Shade basketball before this. There wasn't much of a history, and these guys, they've been awesome so far. They've been awesome.
How awesome. I mean, what a difference it makes, I'm sure, to know that you are kind of welcome with open arms, and that they're excited to have you in here. And I can just tell by the way that you answered that question that there's already like this buy-in and excitement where it seems like your guys are ready to hit the ground running.
Yeah, and I was fortunate. There's a lot of returning seniors to this team, and these guys. And I called every one of these kids as soon as I could, just to introduce myself and kind of ask what they were looking forward to this year. And they wanted to play. They wanted a place to play. And if we couldn't do it, at Maple Shade. They asked me if I knew people in the area, and I didn't know who was going to take me up on it. And to their credit, they've been playing and they love playing. So I'm really excited to get started with these guys, and it's really cool to just kind of see them embrace the challenge. And the other part I've been fortunate enough is my assistant coaches. I'm hoping are going to be two guys who are former Lenape players as well. And you
Oh,
probably
wow.
know just how important assistant coaches are, especially at that those smaller schools. If you have somebody you can trust, it just makes the world a difference.
Yeah, invaluable, definitely invaluable, especially guys like you said, guys that you trust that you can rely on and are going to be right there with you. That's awesome. Now, we may talk about this specifically a little bit later, but or touch on this, but I want to make sure I kind of ask this specifically because I know this is something that you have a passion for, coach, and that's about the best practices for practice planning and for drills. And you alluded to kind of your love and your passion for kind of planning things out. And so let's talk a little bit about what goes into your practice planning and the way that you kind of make a practice plan and also just how you define a good practice. So talk about the preparation and execution of what a good practice looks like for you.
Yeah, so I don't care if it's a preseason practice. I don't care if it's a summer camp, your off season, your in season, your training camps, you're getting ready for postseason practices. You have to compete, right? So competition, I think, is so important. Making sure you design your drills that there's a competitive feel to each one of your drills. That's what we're all addicted to, almost, right? The
Mhm.
competition of this game, the competition of the sport, whether it's as a coach or whether it's as a player. That's what we want to do. We want to compete, and making sure you do that in some way. And that doesn't mean competition's fun. It's supposed to be fun. So it's fun. It's engaging. You make sure you're competing all the time. And one of the things I learned, as far as practice designs a little bit, I always am a big believer after you get through your stretching and such, is to really get into something that's high intensity to start, right? Really grab their attention. So it's like a teacher, right? That activator to kind of get their mind started. And at Lenape, I really learned, whether it's your full court shell or some kind of transition drill, I always learned that high intensity that way, right? Well, at Haddonfield, I actually learned a separate style, and I didn't get it for the first, like, I would say, almost month of working with Coach Wiedemann. And he would do these like passing drills, kind of that, were really quick moving. And I'm like, man, like I get that he's teaching the fundamentals here, but like, what's really going on here? What am I missing here? And I figured it out once I like tried to do one of the drills. I'm like, oh my goodness, it's high intensity for the brain, like it's
Yeah.
cognitively high intensity. I'm like, oh my god, you try and do one of these drills, and it's like I got to go to this spot, go to that spot, then go to this spot, and it took me about honestly like 3 weeks to kind of figure out what's going on. And then once I realized it, I'm like, oh, this is fantastic, and I love that stuff. So something that kind of grabs their attention to start. And again, that competition aspect I think is so important at every drill.
Yeah. That is something that I hear so many really good coaches who I really like and really admire and look up to. They talk about the intensity of the practices that they have and how I can tell just by hearing you that if I were to walk into the gym and kind of go to one of your practices, your guys there must be no wasted motion. Your guys must be going, going, going. Everything is has a purpose and has an intensity to it, and there's like no downtime whatsoever, I imagine.
Oh, that's the hope, right? That's the
Yeah,
hope.
yeah, yeah.
You want it to be like, I love putting the time up on the clock, right?
Oh yeah.
I think
Yeah,
that's
score.
something
Yep.
that, yeah, I mean, that's something I think like 15, 20 years ago in high school gyms, you probably didn't see quite as much. And I think you're seeing it more and more. It lets the kids know what's going on. It lets the kids know how to kind of fuel their energy from drill to drill, right? I think
Yeah.
it's really important. I like having music going during some of the drills, right? And I even like having, as much as I want to have the kids, grab their attention with like some drills that are different from day to day. I like to have routine too. I think for a high school kid, routine is really
Mm-hmm.
important, and that routine of these two drills that Coach Wiedemann even taught to me, where it's like a challenge for them throughout the season. They know it's going to happen every practice, and they're trying to beat their own personal record, their own team record throughout the year. And they know, hey, middle of practice, we're going to go to speed and 100 shots, and let's see how high we can get today, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's something that's really fun for the kids kind of throughout the year. I'm not saying every day they do that drill that it's the greatest, but the days that it is good and the days they beat their personal record, they go crazy. So anything at all that kind of keeps that intensity going, keeps that engagement going, especially when you get to January, right? and you've lost a couple games and you still are looking up at the standings on what's next and what's the next challenges, I think it's really important to keep them engaged and competing in practice.
Yeah, no, I love the aspect of the timer. I love having everything on the timer. I love keeping that those practices, keeping things competitive, keeping things going, moving from one thing to the next. That's really, really, really cool. So let's talk, Coach, about your carryover from one program to another now. As you kind of have been through this process, it's fresh in your mind, and I know you've been on multiple stops as well, so this is something that you've done before as well. When you're thinking about, okay, what is true to my coaching philosophy that I know I'm going to be taking over to a new stop, what are those systems? What are those things that you're carrying over? What's that process of figuring out what you're taking with you, and maybe what you're going to tweak, refine, or potentially even leave behind?
Yeah, I mean, I think the battle always is, right? What are you going to bring with you? What's your system going to look like that matches your personnel, right? Like as much as I want to maybe go 5 out from my Haddonfield days, do I have the point guard to do it, right? Fortunately, I think I do have the point guard this year to do that, right? So you have to match your personnel, right? Regardless of the system. But what I've kind of learned and been lucky enough to be part of these really successful programs that every year have the sustained successes, it's not just about what your X's and O's or your system is as far as that. It's really the standards you're bringing back from those systems, right? Um, for instance, whether Haddonfield's teaching just pace, it doesn't matter if they're going 5 out. It doesn't matter if they're running something a little slower. The pace that they go at is always going to be, excellence. They're looking for that excellence, and they're looking for that effort and energy at all times. So as far as that, that's kind of what I'm looking for as far as that part's going to kind of concerned, and the system part. We bring man to man. I think your last podcast was kind of talking about that. I don't, even the best zone teams know how to play man to man, right? To be a good zone team, you have to be
You have to play man. Yeah.
Exactly. So you got to teach those kids every day how to do that, how to jump to the ball, how to talk on defense, that communication. That's another part of systems, right? As far as bringing systems along, you need to be able to communicate on the floor, offense and defense. And those are the parts that really are the tricks to any system, right? Whether they communicate on the floor, whether the effort's there, the energy's there. And then obviously you want to make sure it matches your personnel. Haddonfield had a system where they kind of went 5 out. They raced their guys to the corner and back up. Their centers, their trailer. They didn't really have a true rim runner like you might see most programs. And this, what he did every day, there's coaches that won't scout them because they're like, they have 65 plays, they have 75 plays. Like it's impossible to scout
So
them,
much
right?
going on. Yeah.
There's just so much, and it's such a true like flow offense. And then when you see the way he builds it, and he just is like, all right, well, we're going to run this one simple action, and my guys better run it as hard as they can. And it didn't matter that it was just one simple action. He's got his guys moving so fast and at such a pace that it turns into something that's just great to watch. And you might think it's some set play he called, and it's really him just teaching them how to play, right? So he might build 6, 7, 8 actions that are just one action off of these spots that they're running to, and then he kind of builds from there and says, all right, now we want our get action into our stagger, into our away, into our pin down. So it makes it easier because he's building it one piece at a time. And he starts that at the off season. And I know a lot of coaches fight that battle, right? Do you put things in on the off season when you're not going to see them in the fall? What are the kids going to forget? And you kind of find out, it's a lot of Darwin's theory a little bit with sports, right? So the best kids are going to want to compete all the time. And even if it's a new player coming into the winter, he knows the standard is, hey, you better know how to run this stuff. And they're going to pick it up pretty quickly if they want to play.
Was this process of these systems that you like to run offensively and defensively, are these things that you've always kind of held as like your basis for your X's and O's philosophy when you began your coaching career, or is this something that's kind of evolved and been adapted throughout your years and throughout your different stops?
Yeah, so I would definitely say it's evolved since the Haddonfield stop was a really good evolution for me, I thought, as a coach, just to seeing a different style. As far as my basis, like I'll always go back to my beginnings with Lenape as far as, that tough man-to-man. We switch. We teach kids how to switch. We really believe in the switchability because we think the best basketball players are capable of switching. And so we really believe in that. We really believe in emotion offense and teaching kids how to do emotion offense. One of the things that Coach Wolf does in the offseason every year is this guy, you wouldn't look at him and think he's the greatest basketball player in the world. He doesn't move that great. He's probably not in me or him in the greatest shape we used to be when we were younger and stuff. And we'll kick these high school kids' butts sometimes playing pickup just because we know how to play motion offense, right? And a lot of his off-season training is just, hey, we're going to run motion against each other. Sometimes he might put a rule in on, hey, there's no dribble here. The varsity guys are going to go into JV guys. There's going to be no dribble for the varsity. And he's just teaching them how to play motion, teaching them how to run that offense and, do different things out of it, right? So my basis has always been, all right, I'm a motion guy. That's my base offense. My base defense is going to be a man-to-man switch. And our full court press, we're going to teach kids how to run and jump. That's what I know best, right? And it's what I'm going to, I'm going into Maple Shade thinking that's what I want to teach. Now, do I have the personnel to match it? That's going to be the battle I kind of have all season, right? And especially it's a numbers game at these small schools, right? I was very fortunate at Lenape to have the depth where we had like 25 kids in our program that are all basketball players. Like they love playing basketball or they're athletes, right? I'm a big multi-sport guy. And if a kid's an athlete, he's going to figure out a way how to shoot a basketball, right? And that's not always the case at the smaller schools, right? You might not have 17 kids even try out for the team. So that's going to be the hard part is, teaching the kids how to do this stuff when you don't have all of those practice pieces. Just like there's that battle with college coaches and high school coaches, right? The college programs have, you might see 20 coaches at practice and they have attention to detail and everything going on. I'm lucky to have 3 guys potentially coaching with me at this Group 1 school. I think the guy before me only had 1 other guy coaching, right? So I think I got a leg up just for that. So, that's the battle within, honestly, with what's going on, what system and what part of the system you take with you.
So with that, because I think that's a really interesting dynamic you kind of find yourself in where you're coming into a program that's much smaller, maybe the basketball pedigree isn't necessarily there, the history isn't there. So when you think about, the things that worked from, a program building standpoint, from a culture standpoint, so to speak, how do you kind of reflect and think like, okay, what could I take at my previous stops who may have had a completely different makeup and a completely different, history? What have you kind of decided that you can kind of take from those and still try to infuse and kind of put into this new position that you're in that doesn't necessarily have that same makeup or dynamic?
So I'm going to start with expectations, honestly, right? It's something that, again, I did my research, right? I talked to a bunch of other schools that are similar positions as me, right? As far as those Group 1 schools. And some of the things that they're worrisome, to be honest with you, Coach. The expectations on what Saturday practices are and, are you going to have the numbers and stuff? So I think a lot of it is I'm going to try and keep these high expectations that I've had at these programs, because at the end of the day, if these kids want to be winners and winners in life and such, they got to have that commitment to excellence. So I think I'm going to start there as far as whether that's a basketball system question or not. I'm not positive, but that's how I'm going to approach it. And then as far as the pieces, I got to find out what the kids are capable of doing, right? So if I want to go, 5 out, I got to find out whether the flow offense like Coach Weedman did at Haddonfield. Can my 5-man, take 2 dribbles with his left hand and dribble handoff while rolling to the basket? Do I have enough shooters, perimeter threats on the outside to run that? Do I have post guys that maybe I have to run a little more high-low than I traditionally would be used to, right? And then the coachability factor is going to also be something that kind of depends on whether I bring everything over or not, right? And a lot of times people hear coachability and they think, we're talking about, kids' attitude and such. And I'm not saying sometimes that is a factor, right? But really a lot of times it's, there's some kids that aren't capable of learning to jump to the ball every time, right? We've had kids on our programs that even at Lenape that have been 4-year players, and, we try and teach them what our run and jump trap system is. And 4 years in, they're not getting it for some reason, right? So it just doesn't click, right? And there's kids that we've all taught kids and coached kids that, we try and we're going to keep trying, right? It's why that kid's still on the team. But, we have to get them to figure it out somehow. But if they can't figure it out, you got to kind of adjust your personnel. And I think that's why in these smaller groups, you see a lot of zone defense, right? I do think it's why, I don't go into this with these delusions of grandeur of I'm going to, be able to outcoach these guys because I know a system they don't know. All these coaches came from know their basketball, come from pedigrees like mine, right? Like they
can't be tricking
thing.
them, can't surprise them,
Yeah,
reinvent
exactly.
the wheel on them.
Exactly. They know what they're doing too, right? And if I go back and watch all this film like I already have, and I'm seeing pretty a common thread here that I'm going to see a lot of zone defense this year, then there's probably a reason for that, right? So again, that doesn't mean you don't teach your shell every day, which we're going to bring back from the system, right? And teaching us how our guys are supposed to jump to the ball, how our guys switch on defense and stuff. But I'm also aware that what, I'm going to be teaching a lot more zone this year than I'm used to in my previous stops.
And that's kind of an interesting, philosophy or an interesting kind of conundrum, I guess, for lack of a better word, that, I think coaches who are taking over a new program have to kind of wrestle with. And I'm sure you did too, where you have things that, you're passionate about and you believe in, and you've seen them work and you've seen the success that you've had with them. But knowing that you're going to a completely different stop with completely different guys and a completely different dynamic, just because it works in one spot, it doesn't work in the other. And you have to figure out what does work and what I can easily transfer. But then also, like you mentioned, right, you got to see where your guys are at and what their skills are. And you got to kind of meet them where they're at and not put them in a position where they're going to struggle just because you saw it work with a different group of guys at a previous spot.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Those expectations, like that's the hard part. So I didn't talk about this earlier, Mike, but I
Hmm.
actually, when I was the assistant athletic director, like I love basketball so much. Those 5 years, I actually coached a fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh
Is
grade
that
travel team.
right?
Right. So
Wow.
I coached like that. I watched them grow up. And, when I first did it, I was young, I was new. And I thought, oh, I just coached at Lenape for a couple of years. I'm going to teach these fourth graders how to play man-to-man defense. And, it was hard. It was hard. Right. So learning that, you know, you have to have that talent, that skill, and as all of us do. And Lenape, and Coach Wolf will say this the first thing to say. I mean, he's been fortunate to have some really great players. Coach Qatar, Coach Lang, Coach Wiedemann know, it's not the X's and O's, it's the Billies and Joes, right?
Hmm.
They, you have to have the players to be able to really do all the great things they're able to do. And they're obviously, the coaching helps with it because they can also implement it when they get this talent. But that's what's really important, right? So that fight, like, I think we're talking about the same thing here, Mike. That fight on what you keep versus your personnel and what
Yeah.
you have to kind of adapt to is that struggle we're always having.
Yeah, no, no, for sure. Absolutely. Shoot, even, year to year, me being at the same spot that I've been in for years, I got a new dynamic of kids and girls that come in, and I'm already like, what I did last year is not going to work. And I can't just imagine it will. And I got to tweak things and adjust to my personnel, let alone you're taking over a completely new program as it is. So, no, for sure.
You're
Let
absolutely.
me ask you about for you when it comes to the trying to build kind of a winning culture where you're at, because I believe you said that where you're at right now, it's not necessarily as the pedigree or the history of being successful, but you have experience being a part of successful programs and you kind of see the things that work with successful programs. Obviously, having talent is definitely going to be a big plus on that, but
Yeah.
I know you've seen other things as well. So what do you feel that you're going to be able to kind of carry over and say, you know what, this is something that I saw from successful programs that I think is going to make a big difference here now that I'm here at Maple Shade.
Yeah, so a lot of it's going to be adaptability, honestly. So, I've talked to my athletic director, Mr. Bruce Diamond. He's been pretty open about things that have gone out in Maple Shade. I think I'm the eighth coach in 15 years there, right? So, obviously, that culture is not quite there. But things I kind of really believe in today's sports and today's athletics, I can't get into a basketball gym with my kids, but I can get into a weight room with them in the fall, right? So, I believe that weight training really helps kids become more athletic. I'm not a guy who says like, oh, that kid's just not a good athlete. He can't improve, right? I really believe kids can become athletic. That doesn't mean they're going to be Russell Westbrook next year, but they can definitely become get quicker feet, get stronger, and with quickness and strength, I think kids become a lot more confident. And I think that's something that's really important in today's athletics to make sure your kids are doing. Because even when I was at Lenape, we didn't hit the weight room every day, and I think today it's really important to make sure you're doing that. I think it's a really good thing, especially if you're in a state like mine where you can't really get them into the basketball gym in the fall and the spring. That's something we are allowed to do in the fall and the spring is the weight room training, right? So I think that helps a lot. And then it's kind of going to be about culture building, and the culture building, whether it's a bowling outing we go to, whether it's starting a booster club that we don't have yet at Maple Shade, and I would like to get started so we can fund our summer league teams, fund our NJ Live and Philly Live tournaments that we have. here in my area, right? I think those are really important things to kind of set that culture going. And then, you talk about where these kids can play every day. Well, we have an outdoor court called Aces in Maple Shade that we want to take care of a little bit better than it looks right now. When I drove by there, and they got weeds growing all the way across their outdoor courts. Literally across the entire baseline is that they don't have a 3-point line in the corners to stand in it. And I think I've talked to my players, and it's something we want to kind of fix and take care of. So we're going to take some spoons out there, in the morning one day, kind of take care of the weeds, put some weed killer in there, and try and show some pride in that, so that the kids have a place to play every day and actually improve on their games, right? Because that's the stuff that's going to be really important as far as long-term success. And then talking to the feeder programs, getting out in the community, and whether that's at a basketball game or at a football game, making sure you're building things that show the kids know you're going to be there long term. You're growing roots in the community, and kind of going from there. As far as, again, that in season, in school part, that's the tough part. I'm an adjunct coach, right? So as an adjunct coach, it's a little tougher because I'm not in the building every day, and I think a lot of coaches think being in the building is worth like 5 wins a year, right? That was the old adage everybody used to say, right? So that's the part that's gonna be a little trickier, I think, for me, that I'm still trying to figure out, to be honest with you, Coach. How can I get, whether it's progress reports signed or face to face with a guidance counselor, so when a kid's having an issue in school, I'm not just some stranger to them, right?
Who's this guy contacting me, sort of thing, and what do they want?
Right. I mean, it's important. It's so, and those personal relationships with the staffers so important as far as them being on your side, right? So I think that part's going to be really important. And I tell our guys, I'm stealing this again from another coach, I know, but we want to compete in the classroom. Compete. Yeah, right. We want to compete. Yeah, we all steal, right? We're the best imitators there are. We compete in the classroom, compete in the community, and compete on the court, right? So I want my kids to. I want Maple Shade to have a full packed gym one day, right? I want the community to come out and watch the game. So the community roots for kids that they like, right? And if my guys are going out to football games and knocking on doors to try and raise funds for the team, I think become kids that are easy for the community to root for. And that's the one thing I am really looking forward to about working with a small town is getting that community outreach a little bit, where it's like they show this personal pride in this program.
And from what you've kind of shared so far, going into, as you mentioned, a program that's in that small school environment, kind of that more tight-knit community, it seems to me that one of the big focuses you have on that is really, as you mentioned, about kind of getting everyone involved in the community, kind of getting the families involved and the community involved. Is this something that you had a lot of experience in your previous stops with, being at much larger institutions, or is this kind of a new foray and a new thing that you're kind of jumping into?
So my time at Haddonfield was such an eye opener, because it's a small school, it's a small community, and the people there support that program like nothing I've seen before. And Lenape we have amazing support at Lenape, and we have as far as the whether it's the faculty, the staff, and the community itself, but it is a large community, right? So when we have big games and stuff like that, it's like a packed. Our court is incredible. It's packed. It feels like you're at a college gym. Honestly, I think there's college gyms that don't have as many seats as we have at a Lenape basketball game sometimes, especially when we're in those big moments. But that Maple Shade connection, where it's that small school, Haddonfield's probably where I'm going to try to copy the most from. And they're HYBAs, they're Haddonfield Youth Basketball Association, and they're in the gym somehow at Haddonfield. I mean, it feels like 24 hours a day, Mike. It really does. It's awesome. And they only got one gym. It's a small gym. And their second gym is like an auxiliary gym where that's where my freshman team practiced, for instance. And it's like a bandbox, basically. Like, it looks like it used to be an old pool. I think that's what they all tell everybody there. But their community just is constantly making sure they support their kids in any way. They have a great relationship with Coach Wiedemann over there. And I think that's what I'm going to mimic the most. And one of the things they do that's really cool, Mike, is they do a thing called their youth program night, which everybody kind of has, right? Like, everybody likes to have their youth night where they invite the kids in their town to the program. One of the things they do with that is they have their seniors after the game sign autographs in the cafeteria. And the HYBA will provide like snacks.
Wow.
yeah, they'll provide some snacks and some food and stuff like that. And then, these seniors now feel like they're the coolest people in the world, like they're professional athletes. They're signing basketballs, and all the little kids are in all of these kids, right? They're in all of them. They love it. And um, the cool part is, Coach Wiedemann's been doing that for so long at this point that these seniors now remember when they were the kid asking for an autograph, right? And they talk about that. So now, like, he's built this program where, a kid like last year with a kid Teddy Bond talking about, when I was a kid, I remember this was so cool. This was the senior I couldn't wait to get an autograph from. And it just kind of builds that relationship with
Wow, that's
a
awesome.
community that, yeah, I mean, it's really cool. So I love that. And I'm hoping we can kind of do something like that at Maple Shade and kind of jump with both feet in.
And that's, I imagine, has to be something that probably Maple Shade has not had in a while with the amount of turnover that you said. I think you said 8 coaches in 15 years. So you're really kind of jumping into this kind of without a lot of infrastructure and structure in place. So this is something I imagine that just as important, maybe as all the X's and O's and the on the court stuff, like getting this up and going on all this culture and the community involvement must be, just as big of a priority and undertaking as the on the court coaching is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, making all the phone calls I've been making over
Yeah.
the last couple weeks and stuff has definitely been a big job. And again, just even getting on the same page with the athletic director on what his vision is, what my vision is, and eventually, even talk to the principal at some point about what my long-term vision would be for this, and making sure everybody's kind of on board. Because again, I'm not the only sport at Maple Shade, right? The wrestling program has their vision, the football program has their vision, and I just would want to make sure that we want to have that winning culture there, because I think everybody understands that it's education-based athletics, and athletics is a great experience, not just for the student athletes who are participating, but the community. It's something that when they see that those kids kind of making the community proud, it's special. I mean, it can really be special for the community. So I'm hoping to kind of build those ties.
Yeah, no, for sure. Now you mentioned, uh, and we talked a little bit about with a coaching staff, and I know at a kind of a smaller school, I think you mentioned how maybe a previous, years at Maple Shade, maybe have one coach and you might have a couple other coaches. And I'm curious kind of your thoughts on this in general about, general advice that maybe you would give potentially to a coach who might be entering a coaching situation where there might be already some, coaches already on staff who may have been there in years previous. How do you think a coach could maybe, leverage those guys or girls into their coaching staff while at the same time also bringing in all the new stuff and all the new things that they're trying to bring in as the head coach? I'm just curious your opinion on that.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, that was actually one of my biggest fears about potentially taking a job, right?
Hmm.
Not having a support system. It's just so important because my kids, I'm in the honeymoon phase right now, right? Like, my kids are all in. They're like, oh, this guy came from these two programs, and it's fantastic. But bottom line is, you know once we lose 2 or 3 games, or once Johnny's not playing the minutes he thought, you need a support system behind you that isn't questioning every decision you make, and understands the things you're doing in practice, the drills you're doing in practice. So as far as, like, actually, taking somebody who hasn't been a part of that, right, and getting them to understand your vision, and buy into that vision, so they're not second guessing you in front of the kids, especially as somebody who might be an adjunct coach, and that the other coach is in the building, right, where they see
Hmm.
those kids every day. And I've seen nightmare situations where um, that has happened, and the coaches overstepped their bounds and done things they probably shouldn't have done as an assistant coach, throwing the head coach under the bus because they want to be the head
Yeah.
coach one day, right? So, advice I would kind of give is that relationship building. It's the same thing with the kids, right? So, doing activities, and I listen to a bunch of podcasts, and even previous of yours, where they talk about that relationship building, about going out to dinners with the coaches before the season. My wife isn't going to see me in the winter, right? So, um, my work husband, if you want to say, last year was Coach Wolf. I probably had 5-hour conversations with that guy. I felt
Hmm.
like twice a day. So, I think it's relationship building with those coaches, and as soon as they understand your why, right? We talk about that all the time as teachers. What's your why? I think once they understand your why, I think it's easier to teach them what you're trying to get done, what your vision is, and what your thing is, and then you have to model that work ethic. If you don't model the work ethic, and you don't model even if it's annoying because you're sending You're sending Matt Hackenberg's plays every 2 seconds, every 2 seconds to your coaches. You're showing them like, listen, you're not going to outwork me, and this is if you want to be where I am one day, this is what you have to do, and this is what comes with it. And I think that just kind of builds a respect that'll help that coach make sure that they want to learn from you every day.
It's, one of those things that I think is kind of a kind of a tricky balance that coaches can have when they're coming into a program that maybe has a lot of guys returning. You mentioned how you have a lot of seniors returning, and sometimes you're going into a program that has already coaches on staff where you kind of balance this like, hey, I want to kind of ingratiate myself. I want to make sure that guys know I'm a team player, and I'm here to be a part of something, and I'm not trying to you know basically wash away everything that maybe they've done previously. But also at the same time, you're like, hey, like there's a reason why I'm here in this position. I'm taking over this job for a reason. I have my philosophies, I have my beliefs, and what I believe in as a coach. And so things are going to be different, things are going to change, and I think that can be kind of tricky, for coaches who want to, try and be nice and not step on anyone's toes, but also at the same point being like, hey, this is what I believe in and this is what we're going to do. And, either got to buy into it, or if you don't buy into it, we got to have a conversation at that point.
Yeah, burn the boat, right? I mean, you have to be on, right? You have to be on. So I think that's a huge thing. And, you even see those behaviors. And, you know, I was really lucky that the previous coach actually sat down with me and we got lunch at a Chipotle and I got to talk about the players with him and stuff, and
Oh,
was an
that's nice.
awesome guy. He was an awesome guy. He just was getting out of education and such and stepped down voluntarily. But an awesome guy. But even things I've seen on film with other coaches in the past with other programs, I mean, you watch film all the time too. You've probably seen programs. You're like, yeah, I mean, that team might look like a mess, but forget that. On the bench, you have the assistant coach here who's got, his arms crossed. He's yelling at a kid for poor body language, and then he's modeling those same body language issues. And, you see him looking at the coach and stuff like that. And, it's really important to understand that they have eyes on them at all time. And the kids have eyes on the assistant coach, just like they have eyes on the varsity coach all the time. So, yeah, it's a tricky balance. I mean, it's a really
Yep.
tricky balance if you don't have somebody who's all in or understands, how important it is what you're doing.
Let me ask you, because this is something that is interesting for me, as I have a few coaches who I know in the area who are taking over programs that maybe aren't historically successful or haven't seen a lot of success. And one of the conversations I have with some of them is talking about how they are going to define what success looks like this coming year, because I don't think it's something that can necessarily, maybe even in year one, be something that you look at on the scoreboard or the win-loss record. So as you kind of come into this program and you're kind of thinking about, okay, how am I going to know if this coming year was a successful or one or not? What is kind of your success criteria, to steal a teaching term there?
Yeah, I mean, it's not results based anymore, right? I mean, that's the thing. I think whether you're the coach of Alabama football, like that guy's talking about these days, right, or you're coaching Maple Shade basketball, it can't just be the win losses, right? So what are you seeing? Where are you seeing growth? Where are you seeing improvement? And it could be, I've heard that we haven't had a great Saturday practice attendance, right? Well, if I can get 95% Saturday practice attendance this year, I think that's showing some success and some growth towards the future and that commitment to excellence, right? Whether I can get some weight room attendance throughout the season, whether I can see, um, uh, you know, we haven't had a 500 record in the division in over 12 years at Maple Shade, right? Just a 500 record. Well, can we get there? Can we get to a double-digit win thing? Those are little goals that are results for that part, right? A little bit. But then I think that attendance part's going to be really important. Um, you know, I watched the film of every game last year, and the amount of technical fouls we kind of had was something that was really, to put it bluntly, worrisome, right? So
Oh,
maybe
really?
this year it's about limiting, so limiting technical fouls could be something that would be, I could even use as like something I want to work on for that body language, right? So I think it's kind of looking at setting some goals that might be different from Lenape and different from Haddonfield that, can keep the kids kind of ahead of time, but also asking them what they want out of it, right? I think that's something we can also do is ask the kids what they think are realistic goals for this season and what they're looking forward to. But I'm all ears, Mike. If you have any advice, I would like to hear what they kind of came up with as well.
So a couple things that we talked about is really like the work ethic, and you kind of mentioned this thing about like the attendance, like that sort of buy-in and just creating the excitement of the program. I think one of the biggest things that I remember in those conversations that I had was just kind of rejuvenating the excitement with that program where, and you talked about this kind of stuff about are the attendance at games up? Is the community, is the parent involvement up? Do people, the stakeholders, there's again another education term for you, do the stakeholders see kind of the groundwork being laid and the vision that this program has going forward, and they want to invest in it, and now the guys get invested in it because they see the groundwork that's being laid. And I think it's kind of one of those things where it's like something that builds momentum, and once that momentum starts going, it starts building further and further. Because I think you're right, it's not going to be something that's just, on the scoreboard, wins and losses, but I think for you, the way that you're describing, right? If the attendance is up from the players on those Saturday practices, if game attendance is up, if parent and community involvement is up, and that momentum is carried over to next year, I think the results will end up speaking for themselves.
Yeah, the tryout numbers is another one I'm looking at, right? And I
Is
actually
it?
had
Yeah.
some, yeah, another one. A guy named Jim Gooding, I actually coached for a long time ago. Kind of took over a similar program as me and gave me some great advice. Gear is a great one. I know we all have different budgets, but offering the kids some incentives with gear, like
Mhm.
2 weeks showing up of 2 weeks straight of weight room showing up. Maybe you get a free pair of shorts, right? I know football programs love doing the Iron Man shirts, right? When they show up all summer to work out. So I think that's a great way to kind of incentivize that. But yeah, those are kind of some of the measuring sticks I'm looking for this year.
For sure. No, 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 that's really cool. Uh, we touched on this a little bit, but the expectations I imagine that you're going to have, and the conversations you're going to be having with parents, and the way that parents are going to be involved in your program, I imagine is a little bit different in terms of what the parent involvement may have been at your previous stop. So what, in your opinion, goes into building a successful connection with a kid's parent, and what are you going to use from those previous stops to try and build those positive ones with your current players, families, and parents?
Yeah, so like at Lenape and Haddonfield, we had parents that were just invested, right? And sometimes that's good and bad,
Mhm.
as we all know, but they were invested. And, you know, you go to a program where the parents maybe aren't as invested, and you go, well, I miss those parents, right? I miss all of them. So Maple Shade, I haven't had enough interaction to find out just how invested they are. I mean, their kids are a part of the team, so I'm guessing they are, want them to have the most successful year possible. But, from what I know so far, there's not a booster club, right? And I haven't been part of a program that did not have a booster club yet, so I'm hoping to get them kind of involved in some way. And whether that's doing the old Saturday gyms where you have, Saturday gym where you have the parents kind of run some halftime fundraisers with a half court shot on one side. You have the little kids at the free throw line on the other side, and getting them invested. But really, honestly, the feeder program is what I'm really hoping I can get parents invested in, right?
Yeah.
At the moment, it's such a small community that they run co-ed basketball up until about eighth grade, and it's great for the girls program, but it's really tough when the seventh, eighth grade boys are using the girls basketball stills. And little Johnny's got a crush on Joanne, and now he's got to run into her, taking charges and stuff like that. It's just a tough. It's just a tough position sometimes for the kids to be put in. So I'm hoping to kind of get them to maybe run into, and the reason they do it is because of the number, right? It's a smaller community, so I get why they have to do it. The numbers aren't there to maybe have a boys and girls program the way they would love to have one. I'm kind of hoping to talk them into that European model, that 3v3. I would love kids to learn how to play 3-on-3 basketball, especially at a young age. If I can get the parents to kind of buy into that vision, I think it would help. If I can get the parents to buy into running a snack stand for the fundraisers for booster clubs, I would love that. And if I would love to get the parents to buy into, being positive at the games. I know it's everybody's dream, but to kind of cheer our kids on without ripping either me or the other team out. You know what? They can rip me as long as they're not ripping the other team and
I
setting
can
that
take it.
example for
Yeah,
them. I
yeah,
get it.
yeah,
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I'd love to do that, right? And you got to reach out to them. They got to know you care about their kids, and they got to know their kids not just another number. And if the kid's playing bad, you think that you're embarrassing yourself. It's not that. You got to make sure they care about you. You care about their kids. So I get all that stuff. I'm a parent now. I got a 10-month-old at home.
Oh,
I'm learning a little bit what those parent blinders look like already, right?
yeah, yeah.
So I get it. So trying to get them to buy in with the kids will go a long way.
Awesome. Congratulations too, Coach. That's great. Let me ask
Thank
you
you.
about your process that you go through, Coach, about your self-reflection, because when you think about taking things from one program to another, you have to go through the process of figuring out, you know what, some things either just don't work, or there's things that, maybe I did in my coaching life in the past that I made some mistakes, or things that like just didn't work, and I dropped them completely, and I don't do that stuff anymore. I alter it, and I learn from this, that, or whatever. What is kind of your process of kind of self-reflection and kind of realizing what maybe is just not a part of who you are as a coach anymore, and something that you've gotten rid of completely, versus maybe some things in your coaching identity you've altered a little bit? How do you kind of self-reflect and kind of internally kind of get yourself better as a coach year after year?
Yeah, so as far as like the team reflection would be more like Huddle. I would use Huddle a lot for the film. I'm a big film junkie, but that also, just like we use Huddle and film for the team reflection, I think it's the same thing with your self reflection, right? You evaluate stats and such for the team. Well, if you find out that every day you're running 10 minutes of shell, and by minute 7 the kids are kind of checked out, well, what are you doing, right? So I think it's the same thing, and you know, another on the coach of mine, a friend of mine, kind of films all of his practices. And again, I know we, especially as teachers, we only have so many hours in the day, but if you can film your practices and watch your practices and kind of find out, like, all right, what drills are working, what minute by minute are the kids still engaged or not still engaged, I think can really be helpful as far as helping you self-reflect on what your best practices are, what practices kind of need to change, right? I think that can really help. Talking to your coaches, I think can really help. Talking to your players throughout the season can really help. I think the kids really love seeing that you are fallible, right? You are
Mm.
somebody that makes mistakes and can admit when they're making mistakes. So Coach Wolf did a great job of that throughout the season. If he thought he was making a mistake or didn't put our kids in the best position for success, he would tell the kids, and he had no problem doing that. He was secure enough in his coaching ability and how the kids already felt about him, that he had no problem stepping up and telling the team, you know what, I didn't prepare us enough for today's game or today's practice, and I let you guys down in some way. So you have to be secure enough in what you're doing to kind of admit when you've made mistakes. And I think asking the kids or asking the coaches, your fellow assistant coaches, to evaluate what's going on and what isn't going on, and what's going right and what isn't going right, goes a long way. And then it just, I use Twitter and I use Instagram and TikTok to kind of find out what the newest stuff is, right? The newest models are, and what I think is good or what I think isn't good. If you're not trying to, just like as a teacher, if you're not looking at professional development in some way, you're not getting better, right?
Mm.
I've had coaches that, were really in that authoritative mindset as far as how they coach, and it worked. And it definitely worked when I was a kid, and it's different now. And I think players will tell you it's different now. And I was just listening to a podcast with Sam Decker, played at Wisconsin, great NBA player, European player, and he was talking about the challenges of going over from the NBA to Europe, and the coaches, very different in their and how they convey their message. And he dealt better with the coaches that did convey the message in a calm, cool, collected manner, right? So I think kind of learning and finding out what are the best practices for today's kid, today's athlete, is something that's really important. If you're not self-reflecting and taking time to self-reflect, you're not going to get better.
Yeah, you really should, and I've mentioned this before on other episodes too. It's really eye-opening even just to like watch yourself coach. I think filming practices is great. Obviously, filming games, there's all kind of game film on there, but taking the time to actually watch yourself as a coach in a practice, or watch yourself as a coach in a game, I know that was been really transformative to me, because I saw stuff that I did, and I thought to myself, man, like if I had, this sort of body language, or, I was coming across this way, and I was one of my players seeing that, I would totally like check out or not have a great feel about that. But that was what my body language was conveying, and I wasn't even paying attention to it, because it wasn't even something I was thinking about. So,
Oh,
that sort of thing,
absolutely.
man, it's completely eye-opening. And I think you really get a sense of like how others see you when you kind of look at yourself and pay attention to yourself in a game or in a practice. Because yeah, it doesn't lie, that's what you were doing, because the film shows that that's what
Oh,
you were doing.
one of the greatest, coaching advice I can kind of give is my first coach was my coach, my uncle Joe Me. And it's funny, And I might have experiences like this year where we're down by 30, 40 points and it's a tough game, right? And it feels like drowning as a coach. There's no other way of saying it. When you're down like that and there's nowhere to go and you don't know what to tell the kids, you feel like you're drowning, and it is one of the worst moments that any human kind of feel from time to time. And my Uncle Joe, he would call a timeout and he'd say, "All right, listen, guys, we got them right where we want them," right? And looking back, I knew that meant the game was probably out of reach for us, but he kept us positive. He kept us going, and like, yeah, we got him right where we want him. And we're little fourth, fifth, sixth graders going out there. He just kept that energy up for us because they're going to, the season's not over after you lose that game, right? And, how that really tough experience goes when you lose a game by 25, 30 points, and what your body language is and what it tells the team about what you think about them. It can really go from carrying over to one game to carrying over 3 weeks. So I think it's a really great experience, as you said, to make sure you watch yourself and know what you look like on the sidelines, because sometimes you're not aware. Sometimes you're not aware of it.
No, definitely. I've been there before, and I know I've said this a few times. Those who've listened for a while have probably heard me say this, but even, I'm sure you know this too, Coach. Sometimes you say something and you don't even like really think about it at the moment, but that could be like the one thing that players remember is like some offhand comment you made like to them 30 years ago, and it stuck with them forever, and you forgot that you said it, like you forgot you said it like
Yeah, you don't
five
even know it
seconds after you
happened,
said
right?
it, but
Yeah,
that's the
yeah,
thing they
exactly.
remember. It's like, oh shoot, they listen to everything.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
absolutely,
It's
absolutely.
crazy. Coach, there's a couple questions I end with, and I give every guest. So starting with this first one, and you've shared a lot already, so hopefully you got another one that you wouldn't mind sharing. But thinking back on your coaching career, what is a moment from your coaching career that you think by sharing it, our listeners would be able to learn from?
So I'm going to use kind of what I've actually done since finding out I got this job, and that is reaching out for help.
Mm,
It's been amazing. People that I've always admired from afar, and was like, man, I wish I could coach with that guy, or wish I could learn from something from that guy. These people, they'll help in a minute's notice, right? So we all got involved in this. We all know the meaning of service leadership, and it's amazing how many people, whether it's a guy named Mike McCarron, who was a Philly Catholic League champion over this way, coached at Palmyra for a little while at a high school in South Jersey, similar to mine. I called him, and the guy talked to me for like an hour about advice of what it's like to coach at a Group 1 school. Talking to outside the box candidates, football coaches who maybe have taken over programs like this, but reaching out for help. It's amazing in this network of coaches, this fraternity and sorority of coaches that we have these days, that we're all willing to kind of reach out, and because somebody did it for us, right? Somebody did it for us, and whether it's like Donnie Lang and Matt Wolf and Eric Cash and Anthony Parenti, these young coaches that I know in my area today, or whoever's over in your area, Mike, or listening to these podcasts and stuff, we're all willing to help each other, and I think it's what makes it special. I think it's what makes us, in our most challenging years, still keep doing it, and keeps us refreshed when we go into the summer and we're ready to start our new season and listen to new ideas, and can't wait to try, our new flow offense, our new motion offense, our new 5 out and such, right?
mhm.
Is that fraternity and sorority that we kind of belong to at this point. And I think reaching out for help is the number one thing I would definitely suggest to any coach, if you're not sure of anything, whatever it is going on.
So many great resources out there too. I mean, the coaching community, the basketball community. To me, I think it's the greatest how helpful we are to each other, how willing we are to share, and all the ideas that are out there. Like if you ask, you're gonna get overwhelmed. I feel like with the amount of responses
Oh,
you get. But I personally think it's awesome just how helpful we are as a community and as a group and a fraternity of coaches.
absolutely, absolutely.
To wrap up, Coach, I give every guest what I call a 60-second soapbox, but you're welcome to go over 60 seconds. I'm not going to time you or anything like that. But I'd like to use this as an opportunity, Coach, for you to kind of get out like a final thought, a final message, a closing idea, something that you want to leave the listeners with. You can take it, any direction with basketball and coaching that you want. It is your soapbox after all. So, Coach, I'm going to kind of serve it up to you here on your soapbox, and I'm going to go ahead and let you take it from here.
Yeah, so my soapbox is going to be about that youth basketball and
All
teaching
right.
kids 3v3, right? So I think we all believe at this point, right? Basketball is about teaching kids how to play with pace and space. Again, during my time as assistant athletic director, I was coaching a travel team in 4th grade basketball, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to teach kids the importance of ball reversals, how it moves the defense and shifts the defense and stuff. And then I found out pretty quickly, like, oh man, fourth graders have a really tough time throwing hard passes from one side to the other, right? So and when you have 5 kids on the floor or 10 kids on the floor, they all just gravitate towards the basketball. So I really believe in the younger ages. I wish we would all kind of adopt this, and every community in the US would adopt this 3v3 format. You have a chance to have kids, number one, doing something athletic. I don't know if you've seen a 5v5 third grade, fourth grade game, but it's just basketball, all 10 kids around it. The strongest kid maybe looks like the best player out there, but you're not really getting true exercise. You're not getting true true basketball
It's
skills
not
being
very
developed,
basketball,
right?
yeah.
Yes, and when you see 3-on-3, you actually are forced to be an athlete, right? You're forced to run down the floor. You're gonna break a sweat. You're gonna learn about space and the importance of space, because if you run right next to your teammate, it's gonna be harder for that teammate to make that pass. And you can now actually have a teammate, even if they're gonna throw a ball that goes 10 feet in the air to pass the ball to you, because that's what their strength allows them to do. You're going to know, oh, I got to run to this open area instead of running right next to my teammate. So I would love our area and all the United States to kind of run that 3v3 format, build the 4v4, build the 5v5. And even when you get to 7th and 8th grade, starting 3v3, then 4v4, then 5v5, because the number one piece of advice I've actually gotten since talking to all these coaches at these group 1 schools is, if you have a group of players that you don't think really know how to play the game, the best practice that they've seen and the most improvement they've seen is actually just teaching kids how to play 3-on-3, to pass screen away, pass cut and go opposite, and learn what to do and learn how to play. And I think it's really important. I think it's something I hope we would kind of copy and model more often in our area.
Love it. The amount of free on free, I think, has really grown, and I really like that too. In particular, when I do it, because players can't hide. You can't disappear in a 5-on-5 setting. You can disappear and kind of melt in the corner or something like that. But on free, everybody has to move, everybody has to be active, and there's so much great basketball that can be taught through that. So love small sided games, love 3-on-3. That stuff's fantastic.
Small sided games, all that stuff's fantastic. And it's not just about the best players either. It's teaching the kids that maybe aren't going to be the greatest basketball players to be athletic. You're getting exercise. And I don't mean just half court. I'm okay with doing it full court. So I think it's a great thing. It's a great way for kids to actually just become better athletes and learn the importance of pace and space.
Love it. Coach Steve, man, this is so much fun, and I'm so excited to have you on here and just hear about all the great ideas and all the energy that I know you're ready to bring here on Maple Shade, and all the great things that you've learned throughout your coaching career that you're ready to infuse and bring in there. And it's going to be real cool to kind of follow your journey and see you revitalize and get the program where it is. So best of luck. I know you got a short timetable here and you're hitting the ground running with everything, but hope it's a great season for you, Coach. And again, can't thank you enough for being on here, willing to talk to us. Really do appreciate it.
Same thing. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys do this year also as well. So thank you. Thanks for having me on again, Mike. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you. And thank you guys so much for listening. This was another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. We will see you guys next time.
Thank you for listening to another edition of the Basketball Teacher Podcast. Make sure to connect with us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or reach us directly through email at basketballteacherpodcast@gmail.com. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.